Hey, I'm Dr. Charlie Metcalf. So glad that you chose to click on this link today. What I want to do in this video is just kind of give you some of the background about the Gospel of Mark, the book of Mark in the Bible. And so I'm going to be producing a couple of these videos over the next couple of weeks, going through looking at certain sections of the book of Mark. And so in order to kind of go through and better understand Mark's message over the upcoming videos, the thing that I wanted to do is kind of just highlight different aspects of Mark's gospel that might help us understand it a little bit better. And so the very first thing, and maybe the thing that might set Mark apart more than anything else, and that we notice in the Gospel of Mark, is the excitement of Mark. The excitement of Mark. And so I've gone through and I've studied this and tried to search for different analogies in order to describe Mark's gospel, his writing style, his perspective. And one of the best things that I've come up with is that going through and reading Mark, looking at the Gospel of Mark, it's like listening to a 5-year-old who had the best day ever. And so you've got this 5-year-old kid, and they're smart enough to kind of comprehend their day, to remember what happened, to try to share their day with you. But at the same time, like, they're also only 5, and so they lack the vocabulary that might be necessary to describe the nuances of what made their day so great. And, as a 5-year-old, their storytelling skills are limited. You don't always have this kind of nice, clean flow of thought and this progression leading to this overarching point. Instead, sometimes you have these kind of brief stream of consciousnesses, right? And they're like explosions, like one right after another. And so, maybe it sounds something like this. Mommy, today was the best. Johnny was in my class today, and he's new, and he likes the Falcons, and he likes football, and he likes chocolate ice cream, and he has a dog named Toby. And for lunch, we got a treat because Mary was there. It was her birthday, and she doesn't like cookies, so her mom brought in this green cake, and it was so wonderful. And then in dodgeball, I won, and then the fireman let me go up on top of the truck. But I don't want to be a fireman when I grow up because their book bags are too heavy. I'd rather go and I'd rather play baseball. And then I found a $1 bill on the playground, and I told Miss Brown about it, and she said I could keep it. And we asked everyone else in the class if it was theirs, and so I'm going to use it to buy a puppy. And you're like, whoa, like, slow down, like what are you talking about? And so, like, you hear this, right? You hear the excitement behind it. You wonder about some of the missing details in there, and yet for that kid, like, that was a great day. And so when we go through and we study the language of Mark, it is not polished. It uses a limited vocabulary compared to some of the other New Testament authors. The grammar and the syntax structures within the book of Mark can be horrendous. I remember seeing it, reading it for the first time in Greek in the original language, and looking at it and translating and saying, I think the entire book is one long run-on sentence. He uses the word "and" over and over and over and over to link the stories, that it's like one long run-on sentence that just end this, and then Jesus did this, and then he went here, and then he did this. The other word that Mark is very fond of is the word immediately. When he uses it, he doesn't mean immediately as in just then. Rather, Mark uses it to kind of propel the gospel forward, that in Mark, the action never stops. And just to kind of compare, to give you a little bit of context here, like Matthew uses the word immediately 5 times. Luke uses the word immediately once. Mark uses the word immediately 42 times. Think about that, 42 times, and there are only 16 chapters in the book of Mark. Speaking of only having 16 chapters, Mark's work is very succinct. He gets straight to the point. There is no birth narrative in the book of Mark. There isn't long teaching sessions from Jesus in the book of Mark. Jesus is going, he's doing, he's healing, he's performing miracles, he's proclaiming the kingdom, and he's inviting followers. The other thing that we notice about Mark is that Mark is very vivid. We believe that he spent time with Peter, that he gleaned all these small kind of critical details which appear in the Jesus stories he tells. We believe that the Gospel of Mark was written by John Mark in the New Testament. So when you see that name, John Mark, we think that's Mark, the same person who was cousins with Barnabas, who went on, with Paul on some of his missionary journeys. Mark is the earliest book written in the New Testament. That when we go through and look at that, we think it dates way back to 55 or 65 AD. And so Like I previously mentioned, the Gospel Mark is action-packed. It takes the reader through this kind of quick journey through the life of Christ. And the way in which Mark tells it, and encourages us not just to be kind of casual observers reading through the story, but rather participants in the story. That you and I, that we can take up our cross and we can follow Jesus on this path, right? Through Jesus' trials, through his sufferings to salvation. And so as we go and as we're looking for points of application in the Gospel of Mark, right? Something that God might be calling us to change in our life, right? To realign with his goals, his values for our lives. I immediately think about the question, what's your excitement level for the Lord? Like, what kind of passion do you have for God? You know, has your heart grown cold? You know, in the book of Romans, one of the verses in there that speak to this is the book of Romans chapter 12, verse 11. It says to never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor, serving the Lord. And so I want to have this excitement for God, right? And that doesn't mean that you have to act like a 5-year-old jacked up on candy, but I think we need to display our passion for Christ. That people should see it in our behavior. They should see it in our joy. You know, they should see it in the way that we live our life, that we should be excited about being alive. We should be excited about being part of the church, about being part of Christ's body. You know, and if you don't have that excitement, if you're not passionate about, worshiping the Lord, about reading his word, like what's going on in your life? You know, is there an area of sin that needs to be addressed? Or has it just kind of been a slow fade for you? You know, just kind of this gradual shift off course, and then, you know, eventually you're left way off the beaten path. And my advice would be, ask God to give you that passion, for God to give you that excitement. You know, don't you think that that's a prayer that God longs to answer? Hope this video helped. Like I said, I'll be making a couple more of these, going through different snippets and stories in the Gospel of Mark. Have a great day.